Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of Marking the Times. This is a very exciting episode of Marking the Times. This is the 100th episode that we're going to be that we're filming here of this video blog. And so, for those of you who've been watching these for all 100, I appreciate that very much. And maybe you've joined us kind of somewhere along the way. But if these are beneficial to you and helpful to you every week, we ask you to mention it to other folks so that they can get involved as well. We try to keep these episodes to about 5 to 6 minutes, so it doesn't take too much of your time. And we give prophecy updates of things that are happening in our world that foreshadow or point toward the fulfillment of Bible prophecy, but also to answer questions that you send in. And so I thought for this 100th episode that I would answer a couple of questions that have come in recently. They're both fairly brief answers. I think that the first question is someone sent in and asked me a question about future rewards or rewards in heaven. This person had been reading my most recent book called Heavenly Rewards. And the question is, will there be future chances to gain more rewards in heaven or eternity, or will the time of rewards be over? That's kind of an interesting question. I've actually never thought about that before. But we get to heaven someday in eternity, maybe in the millennial kingdom. Will there be an opportunity to gain more rewards? I guess that's possible, but the Bible simply doesn't tell us that. The Bible talks about a time when we'll appear at the judgment seat of Christ, and there'll be judgments for other groups of God's people before the time of the millennial kingdom and before the time of the eternal state. So it doesn't tell us anything about some kind of future rewards that we can gain in eternity. So we simply, can't say for sure either way, but the Bible certainly doesn't give us any indication of that. It seems like how we live now is going to be the rewards we gain, and that's what we'll have really for all of eternity. Another question, though, I want to answer is someone sent in and asked about Daniel 8:26, about prophecy being sealed up. And let me just read that. Daniel writes this. He says, "The vision of the evening and the morning, which has been told, is true, but keep the vision secret, for it pertains to many days in the future." Actually, that's not the only place Daniel says that. Over in Daniel chapter 12, 2 more times he's told to seal up the prophecy. In Daniel chapter 12 and verse 4, it says, "But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the book until the end of time. Many will go back and forth and knowledge will increase." And then down in verse 9 of chapter 12, he said, "Go your way, Daniel, for these words are concealed and sealed up till the end time." So people wonder sometimes in the book of Daniel, why is Daniel told to seal up the book of his prophecy? Well, the word in Daniel 8:26, the word to seal there is a word literally preserve or to shut up. And it doesn't have the idea so much as to keep something secret, because obviously Daniel is writing this book that people will read, but it's the idea of to preserve it. And I think there's 2 ideas really that are captured in this idea of sealing up the book. Let me just read a quote from Dr. Walvoord, John Walvoord, his commentary on Daniel. I think he captures this meaning well. He says, "This statement, that is the idea of the book being sealed up, can be interpreted in 2 ways. It can refer to the idea that the text was being sealed or preserved in a way that would prevent it from being tampered with or changed." And I think that's clearly in view here. And then he says this, or it can be understood in the sense that the interpretation of the revelation would not be fully revealed until a time closer to its fulfillment. In light of the whole of the verse, he says perhaps both ideas are intended. That is, God promised to seal the prophecy so as to preserve it until the time of the end. Once the document was sealed, it became official and unchangeable text. But God also seems to imply the prophecy itself would be understood more fully. That is, knowledge would increase as the time for its fulfillment drew near. So the prophecies thus revealed were to have primary application to those living in the time of the end. And so I think that's well said. I think to seal it up means to preserve it, obviously, for people in the future to be able to read it so that it's not tampered with. But I think to be sealed up also carries the idea that the full meaning of what Daniel had written would not be understood until the time of the end, until some of these events began to be unfolded. And I think that's a good meaning for this, or a good understanding of it, because if you go to the book of Revelation, right near the end of the book, in Revelation 22, verse 10, the Apostle John writes, "Do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near." So Daniel's told, seal up your book. John's told, don't seal up the words of this prophecy. So probably it carries the idea, again, of these words that Daniel wrote wouldn't be really fully understood until the time of the end. And you think about it, in chapter 8 of Daniel, chapter 12 and verse 8, even Daniel doesn't really understand what he's writing. So to me, it's a powerful thing to think that for you and me today, we can actually understand more of what Daniel meant than what Daniel understood. We can understand more of what John wrote than even John understood. Now, we don't live in the end time yet, because I see that particularly in these passages as the tribulation period. But as the tribulation period approaches, you and I think, can understand these things better as world events come together, and we can understand future prophecies in terms of prophecies that have been fulfilled. And so in Revelation 22, verse 10, where he says, don't seal up the words of the prophecy, for the time is near, obviously the book of Revelation deals with immediate issues in the churches that he's writing to, the 7 churches. And also the events of the book of Revelation can break in at any time. So it's a book we need to study, we need to understand, especially as we get near to the time of the Lord's coming. So anyway, I hope that helps understand these ideas about sealing and not sealing up these books, these prophetic books that were written. Well, thank you again for joining us. And again, thank you for joining us. For those of you who've been with all 100 episodes, we appreciate you very much. God bless you. We'll see you next time.